Section 6.5 is all about putting everything we did in 6.3 and 6.4 together, right? So the first thing you have to do is you got to figure out what are your x and y variables, right? The second thing we have to do, come up with that objective quantity. What are we trying to maximize? What are we trying to minimize? And write an equation for that, right? Q equals. The third thing we do, we write down all our constraints. When we do that, we think, can this ever be negative? Can y ever be negative? If it can, then you write x is greater than 0. Or if it can't, then y is greater than 0, all that stuff. And then you look through the reading and you take away all the things that say, usually they say at least this many or at most. Those are things that tell you that those are the inequalities, those are the constraints, right? Then you graph them, then you find the points, and then you put the points in that little T-chart and find all the Q values for it. The one that's the biggest Q value is the maximum, the one with the smallest number is the minimum, right? Why do we have issues with this? That's a lot of steps to do, right? And one wee little mistake can cause you a lot of harm in your graph, right? And so, when it comes to this on your exam next week, before you draw out your constraints, you can ask me to correct that first section. And if you don't have constraints, or if you have a constraint incorrect, I will give you that constraint, but just mark off that you didn't have it, so that you can graph the rest of it beautifully, the rest can follow through, and you can get a correct answer. Okay? Are you ready? Suppose you work in a manufacturing plant assembling toy cars and trucks. Toy cars take 40 minutes to assemble and toy trucks take 30 minutes to assemble. You're paid $12 for each toy car and $8 for each toy truck. And because of limited raw materials, you can assemble no more than 14 in total. You must assemble at least 2 toy cars and 4 toy trucks in a shift. How many of each should you assemble in your 8-hour shift to maximize your earnings? Okay? So first thing, what's your x, what's your y?
X.
Good. So you saw 2 things that you could have. X is toy cars. Ooh. And y is toy trucks, right? And that's the number of trucks and the number of cars. What are we trying to maximize or minimize? What's our second step here? We're trying to find our Q, and so we're trying to maximize our earnings. How do you earn money?
Make it yours.
You make it in the amount of toys. So $12 you get paid for each car and $8 for each truck. So your maximizing value, how would we write this statement?
12x equals 12x plus 8y.
Because you're paid $12 for each car, $8 for each truck, and so that's how you're actually paid, and that's how you figure out your maximum quantity. Okay? Then constraints come in. Negative cars you can make. No. So one of my constraints will say x has to be greater than or equal to 0. Another one will say y has to be greater than or equal to 0.
You could say instead of that, greater than 2 or 4, because
Oh,
you don't
good.
even have to.
He already did this reading up here, and it says you have to make at least 2 cars. So instead of being greater than 0, x actually has to be greater than or equal to 2. I agree with you there. So you can change that statement, or you can ignore that when they say at least. And at least 4 trucks, so this should say y has to be greater than 4. Then we go through our reading.
I say less than or equal to 14.
Oh, you can only make 14 in total, is what someone read. So 14 in total. So x plus y has to be less than or equal to 14, because you can only make up to 14. Is there anything else in this reading that we haven't used? We haven't used this time thing. It says toy cars take 40 minutes and toy trucks take 30 minutes, and you have an 8-hour shift. Okay? So we have hours and minutes. Can you fit hours and minutes together? Yeah, if you do a conversion, right? So how many minutes are in 8 hours? Or you have to change those 40 minutes and 30 minutes into hours. So you either deal with fractions or you deal with really big numbers, right? It depends on who you are, okay? I like fractions. Some other people like big numbers. You want to do big numbers this morning? Okay. So, 40 minutes for cars. So that would be 40x plus 30 minutes for trucks. And we have to fit this in an 8-hour shift. So should we have more than 8 hours or less than 8 hours?
Less.
Okay, so less than or equal to 8 hours, but what's 8 hours in minutes?
480 minutes.
8 times 60, and 8 times 60 is 480 minutes. Okay? So then we have to graph this. And some people had a hard time graphing things because they start graphing the x equals and the y equals or the x is greater than 2 and then realize, oh, I have 100. How am I going to do this? So what I would suggest is when you go to graph things, choose the one that you think is going to have the biggest x and y intercepts. Okay? So go to probably the ones that are diagonal lines. Okay? And when we do this, I think it's going to be this 40x plus 30y. So I'm going to deal with this one. Do you want to go into slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b, or do you guys want to do your x-intercepts and your y-intercepts? Okay, so slope-intercept form. So if I do this, I get 40x plus 30y, and I'm just drawing the line so I can put the equal sign, is equal to 480. I subtract the 40x, I get 30y is equal to negative 40x plus 480. What should I do next? Divide everything by 30. So I get y is equal to negative 4/3 x plus 16. Okay. So not as horrible as we thought for big monster numbers, right? But it's there. Do we have any negative numbers? We have a negative 4/3 slope. But do we have any negative x and y intercepts? Not here. This one, if I put 0 in on both sides, I get 0, 14 and 14, 0. So I'm good there. I can probably draw this graph in which I have no negatives, right? So I can make this my 0 line. If this is 0, 1, 2, can I go all the way to 16? Probably, I think. And I can go all the way up and count them by ones as well, right? 1, 2, 3. Hopefully you're better at staying on the lines than I am. 14, 15, 16. I probably don't need to count any higher than that, right? And I can go over as well and count from 0 to 14, but I know each block is 1. Okay? So if I'm going to draw this first line that we just figured out, this y is equal to negative 4/3 x plus 16, I put a point at 16. And then negative 4/3 is down 1, 2, 3, 4, and over 3. And I can do that again, down 4 and over 3 and get this line. Like right here. I'm drawing a solid line because
It's not.
it's equal to, right? And how can I decide which way I cut it?
Okay.
I plug in a point like 0, 0 or 1 and 1,
Yes, for each.
okay? And so if I do this, 0 plus 0 is less than or equal to 480. I agree, it's this way, right? So that's the first line that we drew, and I drew it in a black color. I'm guessing I'm probably going to have to draw them all in black because I'm in the Word document. I'm not in Smart Documents. Okay? Well, we'll see here if I can't play around. So that's that first one I drew in the black color. Now, we can draw any other ones next. I'm going to draw the x plus y is less than or equal to 14. Because I know if I put 0 in for x, y is 14. And if I put 0 in for y, x is 14. Right? So I'm going to do this one in red. So I'm going to have a 14 here. 0, comma 14. And I'm also going to have, and now I'm going to have to count this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, a 14 at this point down here, right? And so if I connect the dots and do that line, ooh, let's try that one again. If I connect the dots and do that line, you get something that looks like that. Hopefully you're using a ruler. Which way do I color? Well, I put 0, 0 in. 0 plus 0 is that less than 14? Yeah, so I color down. So right now, I have this point right now is part of the intersection, but I don't know if it's part of the feasible region yet, right? I have to graph the other lines. What are my other lines? X is greater than 2. Okay, now let's be careful. Is x greater than 2 a vertical line or a horizontal line? Vertical. X is 2 right here. And it's 2 all the way up here and all the way down. Should be putting arrows on the end. X is greater than 2. I'm coloring this way. And I also have to draw my y is greater than 4. Right? Y is greater than 4 is right here. Y is 4. Greater is coloring up. So I actually have this section right in here as my feasible region, right? How many points around our feasible region? 4. We have this point right here, this point at the edge up here, this point between the red and the black line, and this point up here between the red and the blue line. Okay? Now, this is where some people forget to show their work, right? Is coming up with the points. My first point, and so I'm just going to write my chart here. We've got points, and we've got that Q formula we need. What's this point right here? What's this point? 2, 4, right? That point is 2, 4. Do we need to do anything to prove that point? No, because it's an x is equal to 2, a y is equal to 4. It's a straight line, horizontal, vertical line, both cases. No proof. What about this next one over here, this point right here? Well, it's between the green and the black line. The green line is y equals 4, right? And what's that black line? That black line is an equation, right? It's the original equation that says 40x plus 30y is equal to 480, okay? 40x plus 30y. Now, I heard from the crowd that that's 9. okay? And it might be 9, and that's your check, okay? You have to show the math. Plug in y, so we get 40x plus 30 times 4 is equal to 480. 30 times 4, that's 120. 4 times 3 is 12, add a 0 is 120. We get 40x plus 120 equals 480. Subtract the 120, we get 40x is equal to 360. We divide by 40, the zeros cancel, we get 36 divided by 4, which is 9, which is exactly what Morgan told us, but now we have proof that it's 9 mathematically, not just by my fancy ruler drawing, right? So now I have a point that is 9, comma 4, right? We have 2 more points to find, and yes, I know it's monotonous, but we just keep on going. Which points do you want to do next?
Hard one first.
The hard one first, this one between the 2 diagonals, okay? I'm going to change my pen color. I don't think I like it. So this point right here. 2 diagonal lines. One is 40x plus 30y is equal to 480. What's the other line? X plus y equals 14. Is that what the other line is? X plus y is equal to 14. So we can do 2 different things. We can do substitution or elimination, right? What would you prefer? Lots of people, when they're lined up, X's with X's, Y's with Y's, and the numbers on the other side, does elimination. Can we just add or subtract right now? We have to multiply by something, right, to get them to be all even. If I multiply everything by 40, on the bottom I get 40x plus 40y. And what's 14 times 40?
560.
Thank you, Reese. 560. So now we can do a subtraction, right? 40 minus 40 is nothing. 30 minus 40 is negative 10y. And then 480 minus 560 is equal to negative 80. When we divide by negative 10, we get y is equal to 8. Okay, take a look at my graph. If we were to look off my graph, we'd get it wrong, and this is why we solved. I erased 14 and did 14 times 40 to give me 560. You missing glasses today, Gunnar? Okay, sorry.
So,
Have we solved for the whole point? What did we solve? We solved
why?
the y. We still need this x portion, right? How can I get this x portion? I now can take my y is equal to 8 and plug it into one of the original questions. Do you know which question I'm going to plug it into? The small one, x plus y is equal to 14. Why would I do the other one? That's just extra math, right? So x plus y equals 14. If I plug 8 in for y, what does x equal?
X equals 6.
X equals 6. Okay, so x equals 6, y equals 8. I was really off with my one line there. And this is why we check our solutions and check our points.
Oh,
Okay, so our point is 6, 8. And then our final point, where's our last point? In this very top here. If you guys, on your exam, if you just guess and put your points, do you know what each check for your point is worth? 2 marks, right? So if you don't show me your work, there's 2 marks off, 2 marks off, 2 marks off, so you're losing 6. And it's about, what are those questions out of 23 to 25 to 30, depending on how many lines you're drawing. So realistically, 6 out of 30, it's 20% of your questions, so sometimes you might just have to suck up and do what you don't want to do, okay? Life is not always perfect. and you gotta do things that you don't wanna do. Last point. Blue line, what's that blue line anyway? Y equals 2? No, x equals 2. Oh, good thing you guys caught me. X equals 2, and then is it this red line or the black line that has it's the red line, right?
Yep.
And the red line is one of my favorites, it's the x plus y equals 14. It's a really easy check for 2 marks, right? What do we have to do?
Project.
Just plug x in, substitute x in as 2, and 2 plus y equals 14, so y is equal to 12. So this point, because we know what x is equal to, is 2 comma 12. So now we have all 4 points that were around the region. This is a long question. Good thing I only asked you one on your exam. Now what do we do with it? Are we done?
So we have to
No.
plug those numbers into the Q equation and find your min and max.
Good. Plug those numbers into our Q equation. Do we need min and max this time?
Just now.
Just maximum. Okay, so our Q equation is 12x plus 8y. Right? Q is equal to 12x plus 8y. Now, let's take a look at this. If we're just looking for maximum, don't use that 2 and the 4 because you have a 4 and a 9, right? Is there any others that we can kind of cross off? No, there's none that else that are very similar, so we probably should do the math on all the rest. So 12 times 9 plus 8 times 4, that gives us a number of, here's my calculator,
32 is 140.
140. And then 12 times 6 plus 8 times 8,
72 plus 64 is 136.
136. To this math I go. And then 12 times 2, 24, plus 8 times 12, is 96. 120. Thanks. So, which one's our max?
9 and 4.
What does that tell us? 9 comma 4.
You should make 9 cars and 4 trucks.
You should make 9 cars and 4 trucks to maximize your revenue for your workday. Okay? Remember when Mr. Thal used to yell at you to write a sentence? No, he never.
Yeah.
What did you say?
Mrs. Wyckoff, okay. Now we're just talking about everyone. Okay? So, not there. You should make okay, you can just put 9 cars and 4 trucks.
Okay, well, you guys need to do that first, but I already sent it.
We're definitely gonna send it.
Yeah.
Can you spell your marks?
I just